Imagine watching the man who hurt you for 30 years finally say sorry and realizing in that exact moment that he still doesn't get it. And then imagine watching the woman who stayed silent the longest suddenly say one sentence that changes everything. Not yelling, not crying, not attacking, just 4 words that stop him cold. You are not going to shut me down anymore. And what happens next shocked even Kody Brown, because this wasn't drama. This was the moment the entire power dynamic collapsed, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Imagine sitting in silence while your past plays in front of you on a screen, knowing that one moment is about to rewrite everything. Kody Brown had no idea that what she was about to witness would become one of the most powerful scenes in Sister Wives history. January 25th, 2026, TLC aired part 3 of the season 20 tell-all, and it was supposed to be simple, just another recap, another emotional reflection, another carefully edited conversation meant to close the chapter. But nothing about this night followed the plan, because this time, the truth refused to stay quiet. Kody sat beside the host, calm, composed, smiling politely, but her body language told a different story, because the footage about to roll involved the one woman who had always carried her pain quietly, Meri Brown, the first wife, the longest marriage, the woman who endured more silence than anyone else. And as the screen lit up, Kody leaned forward slightly because something felt different immediately. Kody Brown appeared on camera, beginning what he called his apology tour, a series of sit-downs filmed separately with each former wife, where he claimed he wanted healing, growth, and closure. But viewers already knew something was off, because every apology he had given so far came with conditions, expectations, and excuses. When he met with Janelle, it was tense, polite, but unresolved. When he met with Kody, it became awkward, defensive, and uncomfortable, especially with David present. But this meeting with Meri carried a different weight, because this was 32 years of history sitting face to face. Kody opened slowly, choosing his words carefully, saying an apology was needed because things had become toxic. He admitted he was toxic to her, or had been toxic. The wording mattered, because even an apology, he distanced himself from responsibility, placing the damage in the past as if it no longer belonged to him. Then he paused and said something that shifted the tone instantly, asking what exactly she wanted him to apologize for, framing himself as unsure, confused, almost burdened by her expectations. And before Meri could even fully respond, he added that her apology would be welcome too, turning the conversation upside down within seconds. The man who came to apologize positioned himself as the one waiting for forgiveness. Kody, watching from the couch, raised her eyebrows because she recognized that move immediately. It was familiar. It was the same pattern she lived with for decades: the deflection, the reversal, the subtle transfer of blame. Then came the moment that changed everything. Kody brought up Meri's friends, the people who stood beside her after years of emotional abandonment. He asked her to tell them to keep their opinions to themselves. He said it calmly, but the message was sharp. Silence. The people who speak for you, make them stop. And that was when something in Meri shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but decisively. She straightened her posture, looked him directly in the eyes, and spoke with a steadiness that stunned everyone. "You are not going to shut me down anymore." The room felt different, even on screen. Through the screen, Kody reacted instantly. Her face changed, her mouth opened slightly because she knew what that sentence meant. It was not anger, it was not rebellion, it was freedom. Meri continued explaining that when she's not treated well, the people closest to her will defend her, and that was normal human behavior. She was not apologizing for being supported, and if he attacked the people she loved, she would respond without hesitation. And there was no fear in her voice, no trembling, no uncertainty, just clarity. Kody could not contain her reaction. She laughed softly in disbelief, placing her hand over her mouth and said, "Meri was great. That was awesome." Because she was not watching drama, she was watching a woman reclaim something that had been taken from her for over 3 decades, her voice. Christine leaned forward, smiling wider, and said she loved it because Meri finally put him in his place, not cruelly, not harshly, but firmly. And she saw clearly that the apology was never about Meri. It was about Kody making himself feel better. And the moment he mentioned her friends, the conversation was over, because accountability cannot exist alongside control. And that realization hit Christine deeply, because she remembered how long it took her to understand that herself. For 25 years, she tried to explain her pain calmly, respectfully, patiently. And every time she was told she misunderstood, or overreacted, or caused the problem herself. And watching Meri refuse to be silenced brought back the moment Christine herself finally stopped begging to be heard. This was not entertainment anymore. It was recognition between survivors. Meri married Kody in 1990 at just 20 years old, believing in love, faith, and family. She entered plural marriage, trusting the structure would protect her. Instead, it slowly erased her individuality. She watched other wives join the family. She watched pregnancies come and go while she struggled silently with infertility. She blamed herself for not being enough. She endured jealousy, loneliness, and disappointment while still showing up for everyone else. Then intimacy disappeared around 2007, without explanation, without discussion, without resolution. And still she stayed. She kept hoping that if she was patient, loyal, kind, and forgiving, things would change. But they never did. Instead, she was told openly years later that he never loved her, that he was no longer attracted to her, that the marriage would never be repaired. Yet, she was still expected to remain loyal, still expected to stay quiet, still expected to accept scraps of emotional presence. And when she finally sought connection elsewhere during the catfishing scandal, the family blamed her instead of asking why she was so lonely that she reached out in the first place. The narrative painted her as the problem, again and again and again, until she began doubting her own reality. But then something changed. Over time, Meri built friendships, real ones, people who listened without judgment, who reminded her that emotional neglect is still neglect, that abandonment does not require physical absence. And those voices helped her see clearly, and that clarity threatened the one thing Kody depended on: silence. When he demanded her friends stop talking, he was not angry at lies, he was angry at truth, because truth removes control. And Meri refusing to comply marked the end of an era. Christine understood this instantly because she too remembered the first time she chose herself. The fear, the guilt, the grief, and the relief, all at once. And watching Meri reach that moment made her proud, even though they were no longer close, even though their lives had diverged, even though she did not invite her to her wedding to David. This was not about friendship. This was about recognition. You do not need closeness to respect courage. You do not need alignment to honor growth. Christine saw a woman finally stepping out of a shadow she herself once lived in, and she celebrated it openly because that moment belonged to Meri, and no one could take it back. What made this moment even heavier was everything that came before it, because Meri did not arrive at that chair strong by accident. Strength was built slowly through years of disappointment, confusion, and quiet survival. For decades, she believed endurance meant love and silence meant loyalty. She was taught that questioning caused conflict, and conflict meant failure. So she learned to swallow her needs. She learned to smile through discomfort. She learned to accept less while telling herself it was enough. And every time she tried to speak up, she was reminded that harmony mattered more than honesty. But harmony without truth slowly destroys the soul, and Meri felt that destruction long before she could name it. She watched as attention shifted elsewhere, she watched as emotional investment disappeared, and she was left standing in a marriage that existed in name only. Yet she stayed, because hope is powerful, especially when someone keeps feeding it just enough to keep you from leaving. Kody would occasionally hint at new beginnings, new chapters, new opportunities that never came, and that cycle kept her trapped, believing change was just one more sacrifice away. But over time, she started seeing patterns, not just in her own relationship, but across the family. Whenever a wife expressed pain, it became an inconvenience. Whenever concerns were raised, they were reframed as disloyalty. Whenever boundaries were attempted, they were treated as betrayal. And the common thread in every conflict was that Kody always centered himself, his feelings, his reputation, his frustration, and the women were expected to orbit around that center, adjusting, shrinking, and accommodating endlessly. Christine lived this reality for 25 years. Janelle lived it in her own way, and Meri lived it the longest. Yet somehow, Meri was often portrayed as the difficult one, the emotional one, the problem. And that narrative followed her everywhere, even among viewers for years. But season by season, cracks formed in that story, because people began noticing something unsettling. Meri was not difficult, she was depleted. She was not dramatic, she was unheard. And when she finally stepped back emotionally, the family seemed more comfortable blaming her than acknowledging what led her there. The apology tour was supposed to rewrite Kody's image. It was framed as reflection, growth, and humility. But what it truly revealed was how deeply unchanged he remained. Because true accountability does not require defense. And every time he apologized, he followed it with explanation, justification, or expectation. He wanted forgiveness without surrender, and closure without consequence. And that was why Meri's calm refusal landed so powerfully, because she did not argue, she did not debate, she did not attempt to convince him. She simply stated her boundary, and boundaries do not need agreement to be valid. Christine, watching, understood that better than anyone because she remembered how often she tried to explain herself, hoping understanding would come, only to realize understanding was never the goal. Compliance was. And once she stopped complying, everything changed for her too. That was why her reaction was pure joy, not mockery, not celebration of conflict, but celebration of clarity. Meri had crossed the invisible line that separates surviving from living, the line where you stop asking for permission to exist authentically and start honoring your own truth without apology. And viewers felt that shift immediately because it mirrored their own experiences. The workplace where speaking up labeled them difficult, the relationship where boundaries caused backlash, the family dynamic where honesty was punished and silence was rewarded. Meri's words echoed far beyond that room. "You are not going to shut me down anymore," became a statement of autonomy, not just for her, but for anyone who has ever been made to feel small. And Christine's laughter was the laughter of recognition. Laughter that comes when you finally see someone else break free from a cage you once lived in yourself. It was relief that someone else would not lose another decade trying to earn validation that would never come. And the most powerful part was that Christine and Meri did not need reconciliation to share that moment. They were not rebuilding friendship. They were not pretending the past didn't hurt. They were simply acknowledging growth from a distance. And that is something rarely shown on television, especially reality TV, which thrives on forced forgiveness and dramatic reunions. But real healing often looks quieter. It looks like mutual respect without proximity. It looks like wishing someone well without re-entering their life. It looks like cheering for their strength without reopening old wounds. And that is exactly what happened here. Two women who once shared a household, but no longer shared a path, still recognized the courage it took to walk away, and that mutual recognition was enough. Kody, however, seemed unable to grasp why the conversation slipped from his control, because in his world, dialogue only functioned when he directed it. When Meri refused to follow his script, the moment disintegrated, and instead of reflection, he became frustrated because he expected gratitude for showing up. But showing up without change is not growth, it is performance. and performance collapses the moment someone stops playing along. The irony is that the apology tour accomplished the opposite of its intention. Instead of redeeming Kody, it highlighted the evolution of the women he once believed would never leave. Christine rebuilt her life, found genuine love, and